Pocahontas Part 2. And here's the picture of John Smith when he was captured. In Powhatan's longhouse, John Smith faced the chief bravely. With words and with signs, he answered all questions outright. Powhatan looked pleased with what he heard. My father will let him live, thought Pocahontas. But the medicine men were scowling as they danced and shouted and worked their magic. At last they spoke to Powhatan and said that the spirits had told them the white man's magic was evil. The prisoner must die. But as the medicine men made ready to kill John Smith, Pocahontas suddenly rushed forward. She took his head in her arms and laid her head upon his to save him from death. The medicine men grumbled, but Powhatan said the prisoner should live. For there was a custom among the Indians that a maiden could save a prisoner from death if she had taken a liking to him. Then he was her property. So the English captain and the little Indian princess became fast friends. He whittled dolls and toys for her with a sharp knife of steel and showed her some of his things which the Indians thought were magic. In his big pocket he had many strange things. There was a little spirit that lived in a box. The spirit always pointed straight to the north. With it, John Smith could never get lost in the thickest woods. It really was a compass, but to Pocahontas, it was magic. He told about his country, England, far away on the other side of the sea, and about his chief, who was the King of England. This king was still mightier than Powhatan. His house of snow-white stone was as large as a whole Indian village. There, little princesses ran about clad in silk and silver and gold and played with pearls and diamonds. Of more and more wondrous things he talked, until even Powhatan was so impressed that he called John Smith his son and said if he wanted to return to the white man's village, he could. So John Smith bade goodbye to his little Indian princess and said, My princess Jewel, bring me your little basket and I will fill it with bright blue beads. The other Indian girls all envied Pocahontas her beautiful beads, but to her nothing seemed much fun after her white friend had left. When she heard that John Smith and his people were sick and hungry in their village, she begged and prayed till her father let her go to them with food. She filled great baskets with corn and asked her playmates to help her carry them. Leading the procession through the woods, she trudged a long way to Jamestown, the white man's village. The white men had not provided for winter, and now they were sick and hungry. They wept and lamented and wanted to leave the dreary land to which they had come. For all that he tried, John Smith could not cheer them up. He thanked and praised Pocahontas when she came with all the corn, for when his men had eaten their fill, they cheered up. Pocahontas was so happy to see John Smith again that she stood on her head and turned somersaults. Many times that winter, Pocahontas came with food for the Jamestown settlers. Her father let her go, but he was not too pleased. Powhatan liked it still less when John Smith and his men came sailing straight up the river to his village to buy corn. Gruffly, he sold them a little, but he made them pay a very high price. When soon afterward they came sailing again in their ships, he flatly refused to see them. But John Smith sent a message to them that this time he did not come for corn, but to bring rare gifts from the King of England himself. For when King James of England had heard of the mighty Powhatan, who ruled over 30 tribes, he said, Why, he is a king and an emperor, and my royal brother. Royal gifts must be taken to him, and a crown must be put upon his head. So Powhatan received the English. They brought a huge bed into his longhouse. "This is from your royal brother, the King of England," they said. They carried in a shiny basin and pitcher. "These are from your royal brother, the King of England," they said. They hung a purple cape over his shoulders. "This is from your royal brother, the King of England," they said. Powhatan was mighty pleased and gave them his shaggy coonskin robe as a present for their king. But when they wanted Powhatan to kneel so they could put the crown upon his head, he refused, for Powhatan had never stooped for anyone. Crowned he must be, for the King of England had ordered it. So they pushed and pulled till they made him bend just a little, and quickly they put the crown upon his head. This done, the English gave a sign to their ships on the river, and the ships answered with a thundering salute from all their guns. Powhatan jumped up in alarm, but the English quickly assured them that the thunder was all in his honor. Kind of looks like the bed barely fits in his longhouse, doesn't it? After that, Powhatan was in great good humor and had a feast prepared for the Englishmen. They were led out into a fair meadow and asked to sit down around a fire. There they sat, toasting their toes, when suddenly they heard loud shouts and shrieks from the woods. Now it was the English who jumped up in alarm, but they sat down quickly again. Out from the trees whirled Pocahontas, leading a band of young girls. The girls were painted in gleaming colors, and each had a pair of antlers tied to her head. Leaping and yelling, they stormed up to the fire and danced an Indian dance around it. As suddenly as they had come, they ran back into the woods. There they took off their antlers and paint and gently walked back to the meadow. Now the Indians led the white men to the house where the food was prepared, and they made merry and feasted together. They ate corn and fish, turkey and venison, and pumpkin and berries till far into the night. Next day, they parted as friends.